I thought we were headed towards divorce, and that caused me to kind of, get quiet and not deal with conflict because I didn't have the skills to know how. So carry that out with little things over the course of 30 years, and that got us to where we were prior to going to Retrouvaille.
Now,
The opinions expressed in the following program are those of the producer and not necessarily those of WKTV Community Media.
hello, West Michigan. This is GRTV Media Business TV. My name is Pamela Keim, your host. The spirit of the show is to introduce West Michigan to all the businesses, nonprofits, individuals that can help us thrive in our lives. Well, today we're going to be talking about a subject that sometimes we don't only talk with our girlfriends and maybe our ministers or even maybe our doctors, that you're having difficulty in your marriage. I want to welcome to the show. I had her on last year and she was phenomenal. And I will tell you that many people are struggling today, and maybe you think your marriage is pretty much done and there's no hope. I have some guests here to tell you that there is hope, and there is a great program in West Michigan. So I want to welcome Michelle and
Pamela.
David Botro back to the show. Thank you for being here today.
You.
I'm excited about talking about Retrouville.
Thank you.
You both were my guests back last year. We were talking about this, and you were here to talk about how this affected your marriage. And I was so excited about what the success rate of this program is. A lot of people go through marriage counseling and it doesn't really work out. So this really fascinated me, and I think the best way to make a great community is have good marriages and homes. So let me tell us a little bit about who you are and what is Retrouville.
So Retrouville is a marriage support program. It's very much like Marriage Encounter, which a lot of people have heard of. But whereas Marriage Encounter teaches you how to make a good marriage better, Retrouville actually takes those same principles, goes deeper in, and is really for marriages that are hurting. And our success rate is actually, if you go through the weekend program and the 6 follow-up sessions, you have an 85% chance of rating yourself as happily married 5 years later. So
that is an amazing thing, because I know many people that have gone through counseling and it really didn't work out so well.
Yeah.
And then they went back home and they tried to live some of those principles that they were taught, and they ended up with just this vicious cycle. They just started going back to their old habits, because it's easy to go back to that. But all right, so we have a lot of guests here today. So I want you, Retrouville is a program, and it's put on by the Catholic Church. Or
kind of.
Diocese.
It was started in the Catholic Church, and we have the support of the diocese, but it is really not a religious program. There is always a priest there to help, but we do not try to convert anybody. You can make your marriage work without God, but if God is there asking to help, and he can, why wouldn't you? So,
well, I mean, I think that, being both of us religious, you're not Catholic, but I am. I think God knows exactly what you need for your marriage and what's going to heal it, and maybe some things you need to have that conversation. All right, so you are not Catholic, and you went through it with your husband, David, right? And when was that? Was that like 5 years ago?
It was in 2008. So it was a while ago.
So were you introduced to this from friends, or how did you find out about it? Because I only learned about it through, a friend.
So it was a friend that introduced me to it. David and I were having some major problems. I felt we had gone to counselors every 2 years it seemed like, and we would get over whatever the problem was, and then we would end up right back in trouble again, and 2 years later we would be back there to fix those problems. So we ran into something we couldn't get past. I told my friends I needed an intervention more than a counselor, and she recommended the Retrouville program because she had been through it with her husband, and it really hit home. So.
Well, there is a lot of it where it's even season changes. Like, maybe your husband retires and it's a whole different life. Or maybe you're empty nesters and you have to deal with each other. Or maybe you had to leave your career full time, full force, and then you're a home mom, and all of a sudden, there's all kinds of things that happens where it will bring trouble to the marriage that
Yes.
you're not prepared for.
Well, and that's why we brought our friends, the Herwalts, with us this time. Can I introduce them now?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, please do. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This is Jim and May Herwalt, and actually they were going through some times in their life that they felt like they needed some help too. So Jim and May, do you
Yeah,
wanna
please share your
tell
story.
us
What
a little
brought
bit
you?
about that?
Yes.
So we actually are Catholic. We became Catholic in 2017, and that helped our lives in many ways, but one of the ways that it didn't is our marriage was in a big crisis. We were at a point where our children were all either out of the house or our youngest was at home, and our children were really the glue that held us together because we had some major communication issues that began very early in our marriage and just got worse and worse, and we were at a point where we'd been married 30 years and those issues had gotten so severe that we were near the end. We were sleeping in separate rooms, and we had been through counseling and it helped a little bit, but as you mentioned, we went back to our normal ways, and we just couldn't get beyond this communication issue, this ability to deal with even, simple things like driving or major things like finances. We couldn't talk.
We couldn't talk. And I think that's too when I went through a divorce, I will tell you that. And I always tell people, look, you can either save your marriage, which I tell them, do everything you can, because this, even to get a divorce, there's problems. You're going to have other problems you aren't even going to foresee. And I always tell people, it's an arena that I've never was in. So you're in this arena and you're now divorced, right? And then you have to go through that. Or you can stay in your marriage, right? And then you have to deal with problems. So take your road, and whichever way you decide to do is, there's people out there to help you. But I'm just saying, to me, it's like go down that road of doing all you can to save your marriage, and because this has got problems too. This is not the answer. And I will tell you with communication, I always tell younger couples, it's like if you communicate a certain way and you don't deal with it, it just gets worse, and you get into habits. Is that what you found yourself? Is like you said, you got into that rut.
Absolutely. And I think, part of it was from very early on, my experience with my family of origin, I never saw my parents argue, never saw them fight one time in my childhood. So I really had no skills that had been developed, and I thought marriages never argued.
Right.
And on the other hand, honey, you had a little different experience.
Yeah, what was your take on that?
Yeah, I kind of grew up in a chaotic family. My mom's Italian, so everything was loud.
Verbal. Everything was,
yeah,
right.
very verbal. And he came around that, and it was like, wow, they weren't angry at that point. That's just being Italian and loud, all the time. But it was chaotic. There was a lot of fights behind the closed doors,
Did you learn from your parents how to handle conflict, or did they, was it when it built up and it burst and then they got in a big fight and all of a sudden the silent, like some people go through, they go for days for silence and then they come back together?
I was the youngest, so I observed everything. I had an older brother, and he tried to protect my mom one time, and that really got ugly. And I was really young and saw that, and I just stayed out of the way, My thing was I disappeared. I was the quiet person watching everything that was going on. So I don't deal with conflict well at all. I mean, it's kind of like...
I'm a middle child. I don't deal with it either. You're the peacemaker.
That's
you got the
it,
older,
yes.
the younger, and you're trying to make peace. And I always tell people I'm kind of a hallmark.
Yeah.
I don't like a lot of conflict.
Yeah.
But when I'm those type as you probably were, let it build up and then explode.
Yeah.
And then you're arguing about stuff that was 5 years ago, 2 years ago. And why do we remember? I don't know why us women do.
Yeah.
You guys are always baffled. It's like, that was so long ago. Yeah, but I'm still mad about it. I
Yeah.
just want you to know I'm still mad about it.
Right.
And this is okay, so tell us a little bit about how...
So the final straw is never what the real argument's about.
Never what
It's just what pushed you over.
no.
Yeah.
And each person, they throw you into this marriage, and I don't think they do a good job for conflict. This is going to come up. We're going to have money issues. We all went through it, and or maybe you lose a position, a job, or whatever, and you have to deal with that, I guess, don't handle fear very well.
So I think, after 30 years of, I can remember coming back from our honeymoon and within the first couple of weeks getting into our first argument, and I thought our marriage was over because in my experience, married couples don't argue. Right. So I thought we were headed towards divorce, and that caused me to kind of, get quiet and not deal with conflict because I didn't have the skills to know how. So carry that out with little things over the course of 30 years, and that got us to where we were prior to going to Retrouvaille.
Now, let's talk about Retrouville, because there's many people out here maybe listening and saying, oh, that sounds like us, because I know a lot of people that don't sleep in the same room anymore. And I'm really surprised. I'm just like, wow. And they just learned they love their kids, and even their kids are older, but they don't want to go through this whole divorce thing, and they live separate lives. But yet they'll come together for family events. And you're like, I'm like, oh, okay, so you're like roommates? So that's kind of what it appears to be when they're like that?
Yeah, and so then, our experience coming to a Retrouville weekend, which is where we had already met David and Michelle socially before, but was our first experience seeing them along with a couple of other couples share their own story of their struggles in their marriage. And prior to that, I think, when your marriage is struggling and you don't let a lot of your circle of friends know that. Right. I think most of our friends thought our marriage was fine. So you kind of begin to feel like the only bozo on the bus, if you will.
Exactly.
But you come to a Retrouvaille weekend and you hear the presenting couples on the weekend open up and give you a look under the roof, under the hood of their marriage, and find out that you're not alone. That they were where you are, on the verge of calling it quits. This was kind of a last chance for them, their first weekend. And to hear that story and have the gift of hearing other couples be vulnerable, and to see where they are today and the joy that they have today. And they went from where we are today to where they are now. Boy, it just gives you a little bit of hope.
Right, of course.
A lot of hope.
So what year was that you went into Retrouvaille?
2017, and it's kind of interesting. I just want to say, Michelle mentioned that, and we heard this on our weekend, and it's what kept us going, is that 85% of the couples that go through the weekend and do the follow-ups and use the tools that are recommended 5 years later, 85% of them report that their marriage is better than it's ever been. Well, we're just beyond that. We're at 6 years. And if you were to tell us 6 years ago that we would be sitting here today talking about having a happy marriage and loving each other and being able to deal with things that we could never, ever deal with, we'd have said you were crazy. I mean, this is unreal what it's done for our marriage.
So how does the program work, Michelle? That is a great testimony, and I love to hear it, because sometimes you just feel when you're in a difficult marriage or even a situation, right? And you feel hopeless. It's like there's no way out, and to hear somebody, say the words that you've been dying to hear from somebody, they understand, that kind of just makes you almost want to cry. It's like, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
So how does it, okay, so we have, you went through it. Dave, maybe you can talk a little bit about what it is too, because we did talk about that last time for you guys a little bit, now that you've been in it for a while and you're now helping other people. You probably didn't ever see that, right? Let's tell us how to be a good marriage when yours is falling apart. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So tell us how this program works. Do you go in a room? Is it like AA? You said it's like you stay like in a 3-day hotel and you conference? How's this work?
So currently we're meeting at a retreat center out in Spring Lake called Camp Geneva, Lake Geneva, yeah. And you take a whole weekend and stay there. And so you go into, if you were going through the program, you would go into a room that has like 20 other couples in it. There's 3 presenting couples and a priest. They're sitting at the front of the room. We talk about what we have been through as a presenter. You talk about what you've been through, how you use some of the tools that Retrouvaille gives you to get past whatever the problem was, and then you send the couples back to their room to talk about how they might have been in a similar situation and to practice using some of those communication tools.
How quickly how quickly did you guys start to open up? Dave, maybe you can share that when you first started into this, because it's not an easy thing to talk about because you've been keeping it hidden mostly from the world, or maybe your close friends know that you fight and they're just used to you getting, she having her way, you know what I mean? And she's going to blow up at a, oh, there she goes, there she goes,
Well, like you already heard Jim and May talk about how different the families were that they came from. When you get into the Retrouville Weekend, you start to get glimpses into the ingredients and the reasons why in so many cases you are at such a distance from each other, and you realize that, oh my gosh, people think that when they get married it's a whole brand new slate. We're just starting from a brand new beginning and this is all fresh and wonderful and everything. No, you're coming from two incredibly different, in a lot of cases, families of origin. And those people that influenced you and the ones that loved you and the ones that didn't love you during the course of you growing up to reaching the point where you're at the altar with this person,
right,
you're never, I've always said, you're never in a room alone with just your spouse. There's 20 people behind each one of you that loved you, and the opposite that influenced you. And so you come in with a whole different, different set of values, perhaps, different sets of what's important, what you think's important in a marriage versus the other person may not think that. And you're having to suddenly make the things you learned to survive within your original family, within your family of origin, you're bringing those same things, for good or bad, into the marriage. And so Retrouvaille, first of all, makes you aware of that, for goodness sakes. And then it starts to give you the tools in which to, if you have to dismantle some of that, how can you reach in accord? How can you reach this is, if you at least understand, oh my goodness, this isn't aimed at me personally by my spouse. This is what he or she learned as a child. It has nothing to do with being personally aimed at me for malicious reasons. It was just their way of dealing with problems.
Well, remember what I said, we're every age we've ever been.
Yes.
Exactly.
Remember we talked about that, and I do think that people go into marriages sometimes that their spouse is going to fix. And then those feelings come. Let's say if there was money issues, right? If you ever come across, well, if you were a kid that grew up with always money issues, the first thing you're going to feel is fear.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to talk about the budget. I don't want to talk about that I can't spend, or, and you need to talk about those things. This is what we have. And some people run from it because it's like, you're keeping me from something. And because I was a child, I was always told no, right? We might have been told no a lot.
Exactly.
So I think that you're ever age and you've ever been, and you're hitting something, and even that person doesn't even, sometimes I don't know why I'm upset about that. Maybe that's why it's good to have other people kind of talk to you and you feel comfortable.
And they teach you in Retrouvaille this wonderful thing, that feelings are neither right nor wrong. They're feelings.
Right.
If you have a feeling, you're entitled to that feeling. Now what you do, how you manifest it, then you can get a problem if you act out on that feeling in a negative way. But for you to feel something, Retrouvaille gets people that weekend for the first time thinking about how they actually feel about something. And that's critical.
Well, we always don't, isn't it true that sometimes they don't want to say what they feel because they don't want to hurt the other person, right? You're looking at your spouse and saying, I don't like it when you do that, or I don't, does that make sense? Does
Absolutely.
They teach you how to dialogue with each other in a safe manner. And And the worst thing you can say to your spouse is, oh, well, you shouldn't feel that way.
Right. Why do you feel that way?
Just wave a red flag in front of a bull.
Because I don't like your
So
mother.
when,
No.
yeah, there we go.
Your
always
mother,
a
she
reason.
just
Yes.
jabs at me all the time
Yeah.
about everything. You may not, you grew up with it, so you don't notice it.
Mm-hmm.
But Michelle, if I put on a dinner party and she's got a comment all the time, you're like, can we just have a comment?
Right.
You can feel the anxiety before she even walks in the door.
Retrouvaille gives you the tools that you need in order to do conflict management, in order to do the respect, in order to learn how to give grace to each other. And for goodness sakes, I would unequivocally agree with these two that our marriage is 1,000 times greater than than the day we were up there at the altar, pledging things that we truly had very little idea. Now, how do we go about actually implementing these things we just promised?
And it's been 32 years now, which, 32 years and 3 children between us and 6 grandchildren, and none of that would be here if it wasn't for Retrouvaille. That's what I love about it. It gave us a choice. It wasn't just get out of the marriage like society tells you is the answer.
Right.
There's another answer.
You deserve better, is what
Yeah.
they are.
Oh my gosh, yes. And why
You
would you
deserve better.
say, yeah.
Your
and
spouse
no.
is keeping you from,
Yeah,
exactly.
no. That is what society tells you, and that is not the answer. The answer can absolutely be to make it work if you really want to, if you both really want to. It has to be both of you. And I love that they teach you how to do that. So.
Well, and also too, I think as we're older, we understand that sometimes anger is power to them. So if you hold on to your unforgiveness, anger, bitterness, or allows you to act a certain way if you're angry at your spouse, that you really, because we got this fight, right? Like you
Yep.
want to watch TV all day and not participate in family life, and because you got in a fight. I see that a lot. It's like they check out. Sometimes the fight helps them to be able to do what they really want to do. And I think people like that. They like, that's a power, to be angry with somebody.
Well, there's all different things that we do
Yeah.
to get the power back in the relationship. And sometimes we do it without even realizing that we're doing it. And so Retrouvaille makes us aware of what we're doing and also how to overcome not just what your spouse might be doing, but what we are doing in the relationship too. I certainly went into Retrouvaille thinking I needed to fix Dave. And
I would have went into that too.
and we came out of that weekend with my eyes wide open going, holy cow, if I was you, I might not want to be married to me either. I'm a pistol. I was.
Why do you think that is?
I was pretty
Because I'm
aggressive.
sure men come in thinking that's another thing my wife's dragging me to.
Right.
That she's trying to fix. Like we all, I guess it's in our nature, right, to want to do something.
Yep.
But we do. I would go in that saying that I've got more against him than he has against me, right? I have my list.
I had a list. I had a list for sure. I threw something at him and said, this is all your fault. We're here because of you. And when I threw something at him and he ducked, I was like, my eyes were wide opened. Oh my God, no wonder we're here. This is why we're here.
And Retrouvaille teaches you that the object isn't to win the fight. The object is to, let's find a solution here where we can, or let's meet in the middle, or let at least see my side of it and understand why I feel the way that I do. It just takes and lowers the decibel of conflict so dramatically through the tools that it gives you. It just
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you share a little bit
I
too
think,
before?
Please.
yeah, they definitely, one of the topics is love is a choice. You have the right to choose loving your spouse, even if you don't feel that they need or deserve that. Love is a choice. And I think the gift that they give in their tools in this communication, in learning the communication, is going to the feelings, but also listening to what he is saying, not as an attack on me, but on how he's feeling. I think they teach you that tool. Like, now I can share how I'm feeling, and he's listening in a different way. He's not listening. He's not sitting there defensive, like, oh, here we go. Here's my list of all the things I do wrong. He's now hearing me explain how this situation's making me feel.
Well, and it builds more trust, so you're able to communicate and you feel safe.
Yeah,
And I think
can
every
share.
couple's journey is different. You know, David mentioned it's that the object isn't to win the fight. You know, to me, I would say it differently. The object isn't to run away from the fight, because that's what I did. You know, I didn't know how to fight and didn't think we should fight, so I would just be quiet. But now, through the gifts of Retrouvaille, learning that conflict is actually a good thing, because I can get to know May better and why she feels the way that she does. And today, you know, where 7 years ago, our conflict drove us away because we didn't deal with it. Today, it brings us closer. In fact, I would say that if we could go back and start over on day one, I'm not sure I'd do it differently. We are stronger today because of the pain we went through. And I love her more today because of what we've been through, and particularly the last 7 years, the gift of understanding what I misinterpreted about why she did things, to now understand that better, and likewise for her to patiently listen to me and understand what drove me to do some of the things that rubbed her the wrong way.
Now, you both are counselors now? Are you the ones that going? I mean, no, I mean, your testimony, I mean,
No,
it's
and
making me almost weep.
Well, Pam,
Because-
I have to say that one of the beauties of this here is that, you know, no one involved in Retrouvaille is a professional counselor. They're all just real people.
Well, I meant like a
Yeah.
couple like they
but
are.
that's what
to
makes
be
it
able to
so
help.
awesome.
Yeah.
Is that these are real people just like us, who were in most cases very near divorce, and even we've had couples that have come through the weekend that are already divorced
and have gotten back
and
together.
have gotten
Yes.
back together.
Okay, that's
Absolutely.
So
That is
the
wonderful.
only thing
That's
it
so
takes
wonderful.
is, do you want this marriage to work? That you have to have at least an ounce of want. Because I know for my part, I wanted it and I was hopeful for it. I'm not sure you had much hope going into our weekend.
No, I think I was pretty much done. Because I was, you know, being the wife, always wanting to fix things and like seeking out programs, seeking out counselors, seeking out, you know, books to read. And I basically was done. I said, you know, it's up to you to find the next thing. And he did find Retrouvaille. And he said, I found this program. Let's go. I mean, I went mad.
he wanted
I
it
went
to work.
It's like, okay, here we go.
Well,
One more
there it is.
thing.
And
you
it's
know?
just a weekend? Yeah.
Well, it's a weekend, and then there's 6 weekends of follow-up. So you go to a 4-hour session every weekend for 6 weeks.
Okay.
And so if you go to all of those follow-ups and do the work, then your chances of making it increase significantly. But it is definitely work. But hey, marriage, life is work.
It's worth it.
Right?
I'll tell you, it's worth
yes,
it to fight
it
for
is
your
so
marriage.
worth
I
it.
would
And
say
your
that.
family.
Right,
It's
and your
worth it to
family.
fight for your family. My kids are grown. Our children are all grown. And it was still worth it. I mean, it's
worth it. So how does, all right, so let's talk about how does West Michigan learn more about this, and you know, how many, I mean, share.
So we have a website. It's Retrograndrapids.org. And if you go to that website, you'll see the next weekend that we're having, which is February 20, it's the last weekend of February, 23rd through the 25th, I think.
Yeah, I think I saw that on the website.
And so it's $400 for that weekend. That includes everything, but we don't turn anybody away if they can't afford it. We'll find a way to work with you to make it work. We truly, everybody that is there is this is their purpose, their mission in life, to help you make your families stay together. So,
All right, anything else you want to add before we wrap this up? Anything that
You know, one thing
Please.
I would say is that not every couple shares all of their story with their children. Our children know all of our story, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I would say one of the benefits of Retrouvaille is even for the next generations, that they can see that there's hope, because there's an incredible attack on marriages in families today. And so it's not just the benefit of your own marriage, but what an example it sets if you have children or other young married couples in your life, to see the transformation in your
Or even your
life.
friends.
And for them to come to you and say, wow, we know where you were and we can't believe where you are.
And most will say, how do we get that?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So Retrouvaille, they can find it on the website, all the information. And I want to thank you all for being here
Thank you,
today.
Pam. Thank you.
Bringing and especially your testimony. It was just unbelievable, and it made me almost cry. Jim, it almost made me cry. All right, this is Pamela Keim from Grand Tap Media. We will catch you next time. Take care, everyone.
Bye.